All right. Well, firstly, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for giving up your evening. My name's Kaylee, for those of you who haven't met me, and Charlie is lurking in the background as well. We are the Apulia Grove Olives team, and kind of leading the project for the co-op. We have Anthony McMullen, if you want to give us a wave, and Claire Fountain with us from Co-operative Bonds. And they're going to run through a bit of an introduction because these guys have been working with me to sort of map out where we're at so far in terms of developing the co-op, and we'll be working closely together moving forward, assuming that all goes well with the meeting this evening. So I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. Charlie and I are here on Tongarong land, the unceded land of the traditional owners, which is at the edge of the Dja Dja Wurrung country as well. So we work and play and live on that land, and we pay acknowledgement to the elders past, present, and preparing. And if you would like to maybe introduce yourselves and just give very briefly in the chat, just pop down where you're located and sort of the number of trees you've got, so that people who haven't met each other necessarily, because obviously you've all met us, we've worked together before, but you don't know each other necessarily. So if you want to pop something in the chat just to say where you are, how many trees you've got, and what your main interest is this evening, that would be amazing. And then I'll get Claire and Anthony to take it away.
Start.
We might have a few extras coming in as we continue on. I'll let them in as they turn up in the waiting room. So as you can see, everybody's kind of got different sizes, different locations, different ideas of what's happening with co-op. So hopefully we'll be able to get something that works for everybody's needs, but that's basically what we're here to discuss this evening. So yeah, sorry, Claire, you were going to go next, or?
Yep, I can.
Beautiful.
Yeah, kick off. And Anthony, I enjoy very much when I finish talking and then Anthony says all the things I forgot to say, and usually says them a little bit more concisely. So what I wanted to do is basically in 5 minutes say to you that co-ops have been operating in the agricultural space for a long time, and globally it's a fantastic structure that brings people together that can't solve a problem on their own, but by forming a cooperative, you come together to collaborate to develop shared solutions. And so in your case, there's quite a number of opportunities of how you can collaborate with each other to form a cooperative, where that cooperative will help you with your individual businesses. So the conversations Kaylee and I have been having are around what is it that as an individual growers that you would like to be able to have as a service provided by a co-op. So there's that mutual benefit. You have your businesses, you form a co-op which you democratically own and control, and that co-op provides a service to you that helps your businesses grow. So it's that mutual relationship. So co-ops it's a very successful business model. And yeah, in Australia, the agricultural sector is probably the one that has the most cooperatives. So it's tried and tested. Once you've worked out what it is that you want the co-op to do for you and for your individual enterprises, then we can help you crack on and set it up. So I think that's kind of really, that's, you know, a bit in a nutshell. Maybe I'll pass to you, Anthony, to talk a little bit about the Bunya Fund. Yeah, because Kaylee has secured funding that will provide access to Anthony and myself with business model development, also will provide legal and financial advice. So that's great in that you don't have to raise the funds to pay for that yourselves. It will be funded by the Bunya Fund. So Anthony, over to you with all the things I didn't say.
Yeah, no worries. Well, look, I'm kind of wearing two hats this evening. So there's the Bunya Fund, and I am a colleague of Claire in Co-operative Bonds. And Co-operative Bonds is a cooperative of co-op developers. And just to follow on a little bit from what Claire was saying, we live this. So Claire was talking about, you know, things that you can't solve on your own. And our co-op provides all because we provide professional services, cooperative development services as part of cooperative bonds. And so it's a good example. We share our insurance costs, which are quite considerable when you're going for government contracts and things like that, and would be very difficult to afford on your own. But as a group buying situation, that's a service that you can buy together and save a lot of money on. There are also examples where, you know, particularly farmers will, in a way, they'll group buy and group own common infrastructure. You know, it might be a fridge or equipment or those sorts of things that they can share on an equitable basis. So it's that sharing services and infrastructure for common benefit. And then there's the broader sort of social good that co-ops do, because they keep profits local, they keep communities thriving. They're locally owned Australian businesses. So yeah, we love them. But in terms of the Bunya Fund is still pretty new. We're in our third year. And the cooperative movement as a whole, under the Business Council of Cooperatives and Mutuals, identified that there was a real lack of support for new, you know, to build, to assist cooperative projects that are kind of in existence to grow and happen, or indeed conversions. And this is what this discussion is about. So usually the fund will provide support in the way of professional services and sometimes infrastructure. So the fund is paid for things like, you know, zero accounting. There was a construction co-op, and I think we paid for a ladder. But generally, it's professional services like tax, accounting, legal, and co-op development services, which is what we're doing right now. And yeah, it was an extremely competitive process this year. There were a lot more applicants than usual, and a lot of them were very, very strong. So the competition was stiff. And so congratulations to you, Kaylee. You're in this category of an existing business that's been running. It's a going concern, and the idea is to potentially convert that to a cooperative structure, and potentially assist to sort of a buyout of the existing owners, or some other beneficial arrangement between the members and the current business that's going into conversion. And the Bunya Fund saw this particular project as very interesting in terms of, if we can really nut out a really great model at this local level for this particular business in this particular community, it's something that is potentially replicable in other communities for other small farmers that are wanting to, you know, think about succession and all those sorts of things. So rather than it just going kaput, or going to some mega, you know, listed company, agribusiness, overseas invested thingamajiggy, it can go to a kind of a cooperative and sort of go out to the farming community and to communities that want to benefit in common. So again, keeping those profits and businesses local.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so for those I haven't specifically spoken to about the project, we kind of put it out to the mailing list. Charlie and I are looking at this as part of our well, number one, I've always been more about collaboration than competition. I think, and I've probably mentioned it to many of you, that the olive industry in the small scale grower sector is very much like the wine industry was sort of 30 or 40 years ago, where there's lots of people who are kind of muddling along, not really doing a lot. And if we can get together and collaborate, then we're all going to be more successful, is kind of where I'm coming from. Charlie and I have been in the industry since 2007. So we have a lot of background in that space. And at the same time, we've seen a lot of changeover in terms of who owns the groves. So a lot of the people who planted them back in the early 2000s have now moved on from their farm for a variety of reasons. And so the next wave of owners is coming in now. And I think it's a really great time to capture some of that energy in the industry and to work better together as small growers. Initially, you know, we're 15 years down the track too, and excuse me, neither of us are getting any younger. So we don't have kids. So we're looking at it as a succession plan for the farm, for the business, so that small processing service isn't lost, because there's a lot of people out there who used to do small batch processing and aren't anymore for a variety of reasons, mostly due to age or exiting the industry. So I really want to thank everybody who has filled out the couple of surveys. I'm going to go through and give you a bit of a summary of what we actually found from that. And hopefully it will work for everybody here. So the main thing that people wanted, so initially that secondary survey we sent out to everybody who said yes, they were interested in attending the webinar today, which was about half of the respondents from the survey itself. And so, yeah, everybody's takeaway from that was, well, I was kind of thinking these are the people who are you know, keen to know more. So that's why we sort of whittled it down as we went. So we had 20 responses in the end of that sort of 40 people, which is, you know, I'm pretty happy with that. The main thing that people wanted from the co-op was grower education opportunities. So more field days, more, you know, webinars, more, all these sorts of things. And I've got some ideas that I've kind of been putting together based on that. The second most important thing was discounted oil processing, strange to relate, and then shared equipment in order to make the harvesting and pruning and so forth a bit more manageable in terms of grove management. And then we went down. Yeah, if you've got any questions, feel free to chuck them in the chat too. We will go through them as well. So so making some money and cooperative branding and marketing was the next most important one for people, which is good to see. I know that some of the people on the meeting here have their own brands, and there's absolutely no need for you to fold those businesses that you already have. They can work in conjunction with the cooperative. So there's no expectation that you know, all the effort and time and money and so forth that you've already put into building your own brands would be taken away. It's just being able to potentially leverage. So if you're already doing a farmer's market, for example, if you're also part of the co-op, then, you know, other people who are doing farmers markets in other parts of the state, for example, could take some of your product with them. And so you're actually multiplying the number of sales that you can make on any given weekend, because you can only be in one place at one time, that sort of situation. New products and new markets were on the list, but only sort of medium benefit to people. And then some others that came up was the potential for the co-op to be a labour hire company and have some specialised labour that people could hire, but also in terms of what Anthony was talking about before, the bulk purchasing of things like insurance, or you know, at the moment we've got a big problem with olive lacebug. The specific chemical to deal with that is about $300 a litre, and you only need about 3 mils to actually do, you know, a handful of trees. So you don't want to pay $300 for something that you're not going to use a huge amount of. So that was kind of where the focus for idea development went, with the grower education side of things. The potential for discounted oil processing and the shared equipment were the 3 things that I really focused on to start with. Now, in terms of the shared equipment, the second survey did ask people how much money they could throw at the problem. I really want to reiterate Claire and Anthony's words here about the funding that we have received so far. Most co-ops, when they're looking to start, would actually need to pay for the legal and the accounting and the business development information. So we're already ahead of the 8 ball in that respect. We don't have to find money for that. So anything that we do raise in that initial sort of buy-in period can go straight towards either purchasing some equipment for next harvest, or, you know, whatever we cooperatively decide to do. And I just want to really reiterate to people, we actually have a serious amount of industry support for this project as well from the National Olive Association. And they are the people, the Australian Olive Association do a lot of the lobbying to government and so forth, and they're very keen to see this project get up, and to the point where there's a secondary project that we might discuss if we get some time at the end. But yeah, so I can't emphasize enough how perfect the timing for this opportunity is from my perspective. So yeah. So anyway, as I said, if everybody put in what they said that they could put in, we would end up with a starting kitty of just over $18,500, which is potentially, you know, something to, as I said, discuss where that might go. It could go towards, you know, hiring somebody to do some more grant writing. I've identified a number of grants that we might be eligible to apply for, depending on the structure that we set up and all that sort of thing. And then finally, the membership idea. People were most excited about the idea of having full access to everything for one price. So the suggested price was a minimum of $150 for the year. But you know, that would obviously be set by the steering committee in conjunction with everybody. And then the second most popular one was having a membership that was tiered towards primary producers, and we would have to work out what defined a primary producer, and having a secondary tier for hobby farmers, so people who, you know, have a couple of trees in their backyard, that sort of thing. So that was a secondary option. So yeah, that's basically what came out of that. So I had a bit of a think around what sort of grower education opportunities there are out there. And a number of these I already run or through our business. So things like practical pruning, chainsaw use and maintenance, that sort of thing. But here's the thing, guys, I don't want to do it all myself. Like I much prefer collaborating with people. And, you know, you all have mad skills. You've learned things along the way. So there's potential to share that with the broader community as well. So we're looking at short courses potentially, and maybe co-op membership entitles you to a discount on the ticket price. Maybe it's 10% or something. Some of those could be in person, some of those could be online, as I said, depending on what we're looking at. The AOA did some great lunch and learn type things over COVID. So, you know, we could do those sorts of things as well. Then we've got sort of a longer course format, which may be something to do further down the track. I don't know what people's interest is in terms of things like a Cert 2 or Cert 3 or Cert 4 in production horticulture or food processing. So for that growing side of things and the oil processing, table olive processing side of things, if you want to really dig into the nitty gritty, there are already units designed specifically for olive oil production, because Boundary Bend has to train people. So they've already put the work into doing some accredited courses. And so the potential there might be to partner with, you know, local registered training organisations. I've got some pretty good contacts with Kangan Batman TAFE in Bendigo and a number of other private RTOs around, because I used to work in that area as well. And so you could be looking at things like, you know, Cert 2 in production horticulture for school students, for example, to try and, you know, get some younger people into the industry, because at the moment it's fairly top heavy in the shall we say, in the retiree category. And then, you know, things as well, like how to develop a farm plan. So yes, you're doing olives at the moment. Maybe you want to expand that into other areas if you've got time and energy. So with regards to the discount oil processing, I kind of came up with 3 different options as to what might work. So obviously we will continue to be the olive processing side of things, because most of you have batches that are the size that we can deal with. Potentially the co-op might look at purchasing. So there has been identified by Charlie and I a niche for a slightly larger processing machine that can do up to sort of a ton per hour, and still do it in batches, and still do it in that sort of 200 to 1 ton space. So we get inquiries from people who might have 600 or 800 kilos and can't take them anywhere, because it's not enough for the big guys, but it's too much for us to do at the moment. So there is potentially space there to expand operations in the future. Again, I'm not saying, you know, these are all pie in the sky. But So if you made the membership fee $250 a year, you could potentially include that with a discounted flagfall for our services that we already offer down to $100, which is our second batch flagfall at the moment. And if you want to do that for your personal branded oil that you're still selling, and then anything after that would be the third and continuous discount. Potentially we could do it like we do for the Bendigo Community Processing Day, which is charge a $25 fee. And for the 10% of the member, so we'll have some discussion around what the member rules for active membership are coming out of this, but you know, based on some things that I've thought about, this is where we're going, or this is where I'm thinking. So if we said, you know, 10% of your member harvest had to be processed through the co-op in order to be an active member, then, you know, that might cost you $25. And then you don't pay that up front. We take that out of the oil sales from the cooperatively branded oil to cover our costs in terms of, you know, buying the diesel and labour and so forth. The other option is for people who don't have a lot of trees, you can sell your fruit to the co-op. There's no processing charge for that. And we get paid for our processing services out of the, again, out of the sale of that oil through the cooperatively branded product. So there's a few things to think about there. And then the last one was the shared equipment side of things, which could get a bit tricky. But what I would suggest in this case is actually hold off on doing this until the co-op gets up and gets a bit more established, and maybe make it a 6-month goal for next harvest rather than something that we do immediately. Because we could use that startup capital potentially to purchase electric rakes, pruning shears, harvest baskets, etc. Based on whatever the member priorities are. I would personally, if we go down this path, I would strongly suggest starting with an oleo net, which is one of those big umbrella nets, which make harvesting so much easier for everybody. It doesn't matter how you do it. And then again, if we increase the membership fee a little bit further, then we could, going back to that idea of succession planning for Charlie and I, the potential there is to have like a hire to own cost to the co-op. So our equipment that we have could potentially over time be transferred ownership to the co-op. So you're effectively paying for it secondhand, which would be considerable saving as well. As I said before, we could potentially use the startup capital to fund a grant writer to see if we can get a bit more money in the pot to do some of these things. Now, the other one would be potentially to use the capital to pay a graphic designer to do a member prospectus so that we can get a few more members in, and obviously that helps to start a bit of a pool of funds as well. So the last one I want to mention is that, you know, potentially we could use that capital as well to start with the education side of things and to fund the creation of some video assets in those, you know, courses, short courses that could potentially be offered online, so that it's not just the cooperative membership that is making use of those. They can be sold to the wider public as well, and then potentially get a bit of capital happening that way. The reason I mentioned that one last is because next year is also the UNESCO designated year of the cooperative. And because we are very excited by this and the timing, as I said, of potentially starting the cooperative, I had a wild, crazy idea. One of the gentlemen who was going to be on tonight, but it looks like he couldn't make it, is actually a videographer and did mention this specifically unrelated to discussions about other olive things. And so the potential is there to maybe document some of this process of how we're going about starting the cooperative, and then hopefully, I've had a discussion with a few people, the timeline would work to sort of release that as a, you know, short documentary film sort of in October next year, maybe at the next AOA conference or something like that. That is where the industry is very interested in supporting us. They have some funds that they would be able to throw at that project potentially. So again, we have a lot of support around this, guys. And yeah, I hope everybody's as excited as I am. So any questions, comments, thoughts? We don't have any questions in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourselves. I think you can.
Kaylee, you know, when you did the survey, did you have a breakdown of what percentage was, you know, big commercial growers, what percentage were just someone with 3 trees in the backyard? Did you have a breakdown?
I do. I don't have the figures to hand, but one of the things that Claire and I discussed was that I could have actually designed, it was kind of the first big survey that I'd done, and I could have designed it a bit better. So we basically had people self-identifying as to whether they were a primary producer or a hobby farmer. So you can see in the comments, you know, some people have got a couple of hundred trees, but I know, oh, I forgot to mention, there is one lady who is absolutely 100% on board to be a board member. She loves olives, and she's got 2 trees in her backyard and reservoir, and she just loves olive trees. So, you know, there's definitely that level of difference, but hopefully with what we're kind of putting together, we can, you know, if it doesn't feel like it's going to be something for you, that doesn't necessarily mean that it shouldn't exist, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Now I think we have.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. So thank you, Charlie, for that one. The sub-project. So one of the ideas that I had around membership, a membership drive, if you like, was going to the real estate agents who are doing a lot of the property transfers, and saying, if you've got properties with olive groves, you know, here's a thing that will help the new owners, because we get a lot of queries about that. There's a great video online. Let me see if I can find it. Hang on. No, I think it's that one. Oops. Oh, helps if I spell it correctly. Abandoned. Here we go. Okay, so if you want to check out this website as well, I will be saving the chat for everybody. This guy is a Canadian of Italian descent who goes around and picks the abandoned groves in Italy and makes it into olive oil. There's also a fantastic YouTube video. So he's got a whole doco about what he does as well and why. But let's see if I can find the link to let's see if that finds it. Yeah, here we go. I just grabbed the link for that one. This guy has an olive processing machine on the back of a truck, and I think it is brilliant, and I want to copy it and take it around, because we get, I'm not joking, we have a lady who comes from South Australia to get her olives processed with us because she can't find somebody who does small batches over in South Australia. We've had queries from Warrnambool, we've had queries from Traralgon and Benalla and all over the shop. So if we can set up shop in a spot, do our thing, and then that's, you know, that's going to increase food security for the local community, and also, you know, stop the olives being a waste as well, because one of the things that I don't know if you're aware, they're a declared noxious weed in South Australia because the cockies eat them and they go out into the bush and they poo them out, the seeds, and they're just all through the bush. So if we're not harvesting the olives and they're just going to waste each year, that's a real risk, particularly around central Victoria, where we have a lot of ironbark forests and lots of state and national parks as well. So you know, there is a broader picture involved as well. So any other questions? Timing of forming the co-op. Well, that's really up to everybody here. So what we need to do now is, as I said, we've got 2 definite people who want to form a steering committee. The steering committee generally translates into the first board of directors. And we just need 3 more. Yes, absolutely. I would love to be involved with this project, and we can start talking about what an active member might need to do in order to maintain active membership. We're going to talk about what the rules for the co-op actually are, and you know, again, there's templates and things for those. You don't have to come up with them from scratch, but it's really a lot more sort of hands-on from here. Yeah, go for it, Claire.
I wanted to provide a bit more information about the role that I'll be playing, Anthony will be playing from a co-op development perspective. And something that came up in a conversation earlier this week was about, you know, if you step into being on the steering committee, does that mean you're committing to the co-op? So one of the key roles of a steering committee is to actually build the co-op and make sure that it's going to be financially viable and sustainable, and it's going to provide value to the members. So as Kaylee's just given lots of different ideas, my role will be to provide you and make sure that you have the education and understanding of how a co-op works and what needs to be in place for a co-op to be successful. If you go down that pathway, a successful co-op's not based on enthusiasm alone. It needs to be based on being financially viable, more money coming in than going out. So I just want to, I know, and these are the conversations that Kaylee and I have all the time, and she's laughing because I'm kind of the voice of, yeah, that's great.
Very lovingly
and kindly. That's a great idea. How's it going to work? And who's going to pay for it? And how much would they be prepared to pay for it? So whilst Kaylee's, you've done the survey. So from that survey, you've established that there is interest and that there is the potential for a co-op to help you in your with your groves. Nothing is decided and everything needs to be tested. And so stepping into the conversation, you will be educated and you'll be given the opportunity to say, actually, now I'm in this conversation, I've realised this isn't for me, I want to step out of the conversation. So it's not a binding commitment, and the steering committee is about steering and navigating. So I guess I just wanted to flag that. And one of the things I'm enjoying about working with Kaylee is I'm kind of like that. Well, that's a great idea. Come back down to earth. How's it going to work? So that's the and then we get the accountants and the lawyers in once we're pretty confident that you've got the basis for a cooperative. But yeah, you don't have to know anything about co-ops to step into the space. So just to reassure you, and you can step in and then step out if you want to.
Yeah, no binding contracts. Just before we move on from that, Anthony, sorry, I just want to say for everybody, when I send out the link for the recording for tonight, I'll send it out to everybody who expressed an interest and couldn't make it, but I have some ideas, as I said, around grants that we can write for and how it might work in terms of income streams and that sort of thing for the co-op as well. So there's more detail than I've obviously gone into here. Yeah, Anthony, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, I just add to what Claire's saying in that the ideas are just they're so exciting, and I don't know that much about olives other than liking olives a lot. And if any of you supply Syracuse supermarket in Thornbury, they have particularly good olives that I'm very passionate about. But that's an aside. You can start pretty small and with a small amount of money together as a group within the cooperative, but just something that's useful and that is going to start, working for the co-op, working towards the viability, something that everyone will use and benefit from, feel good about paying for together, saving some money and time by doing that together. And it can be pretty small. And then that's the basis of where you go. And then you've kind of got a group of people that are benefiting from something in common that can then start group purchasing other things once you've really started to work at, or find other opportunities like marketing, or get some funding for education and development. You've got a legal entity that is based on members participating, contributing, making decisions together for the common good of all the membership. So yeah, you can start pretty small on the lowest hanging olive, not the lowest hanging fruit. Oh, I'm really sorry. I'm not doing well tonight. But anyway, you know what I mean. You can start pretty small and it can work really well. And then you're just feeling fantastic about, doing this together and then benefiting together.
Can I ask? Well, hang on. Can I start by saying that the work that Kaylee, you've done, and Charles has been fantastic in generating the enthusiasm. And I don't think anyone would, or anyone on this call anyway, would doubt that or diminish about that. Can I ask about liability exposure? There's a question there about time, effort you're expecting. I like some things, you don't like others. I get all that about cooperatives, but I'm wondering fundamentally, what is my exposure? What am I committing to? What is my liability? Things like that. Now, to a degree, it's a DICSA, but to another degree, it's not. So, Claire, Kaylee, Anthony.
I'm going to throw that one to the gurus. Thanks.
Yes.
I'm usually the structure guy, the policy guy, so I usually answer questions like that.
Known as the nerd.
Yes, I'm a bit nerdy. Andrew, it's just like a regular entity, you know, there's limited liability. So all of the things that would apply to a company, or, you know, whether it's for profit or not for profit, apply. Once you're on the board, like any organization, or you're the secretary, you can have some some individual personal liability. If you're dodgy, you do the wrong thing, all of those things that would apply to board membership or secretary membership, or indeed if you're an officer, such as, you know, the CEO, and you do something dodgy. But generally there's no difference, and there's no added risk in terms of being a cooperative. There is the question that the steering committee is kind of like a group of promoters. So it's wise for the steering committee to not really sign on to things and get into contracts and things like that, because before you've actually established the legal entity, there can potentially be some exposure there. But if you're only doing little things that everyone's agreeing to, that's fine. And generally when you launch the co-op, you'll have a disclosure statement, which is like a prospectus. So anyone that wants to become a member, you've just put all the information, what you need to put in, what you're going to get out. It's all completely transparent. You draft that conservatively, you don't oversell yourself, and then you're fine.
And
does that answer your question, Andrew?
Sorry, the other question becomes, what's the commitment?
Yes, well,
if
so
I
this
put
is
my hand up,
yeah.
Kaylee, what do you want?
So my ideal timeline is to launch this thing to start taking members at the AOA conference at the end of October. Now, I realize that's ambitious. It doesn't have to be that way, as long as, you know, ideally we'll have something up and running before harvest next year at the latest. But I think it would be amazing if we could, because I've already been asked to speak about the co-op at the conference this year, and just, you know, where it's at, what we're doing, how it all fits together. Because as I said, we do have such strong industry support for this project. And so that's all happening on the Thursday. So if you haven't already registered, I highly recommend you come along anyway, because a lot of the Thursday is designed for small growers as well. And yeah, so that's kind of my time frame. So whatever you can commit to in that time frame to kind of make that happen. I don't know.
So this is where I go, okay, October. In terms of having the co-op registered, so that's with a fully worked out financial model, a fully worked out legal model, and draft rules drafted, lodged with the registrar, approved, and cooperative launched with formation meeting. Not so optimistic, but what you can use the October session for is, if you haven't, depending on how far down that process you would be able to absolutely put it out there in terms of, this is what we're doing. The other thing to take into consideration is your co-op, as Anthony said, starting small, might be place-based. So actually people from not that place may not be able to gain value from it. But what you can do is you can harvest their email addresses and contact details, so that as you grow, you've then got a willing audience or potential new member base there lined up, ready to go. So I think it's a really, really great opportunity to get some exposure in October. Depending on how far you've got by then will depend on whether it's harvesting emails or signing up new members.
And here's the beauty of the thing about how Claire and I work together. I have crazy ideas and she doesn't shoot me down, but she brings me back to earth, because I have no idea. I've never done this before, guys. I don't know what the time frame is. I'm just, spitballing, and go big or go home is kind of how I go. But let's put it out there and see what happens. Now there was another question from Peter about community initiatives. So organizations can be members of a cooperative, Peter. They don't have to be individuals. So yeah, I've spoken with Isabel. She is also very supportive of the whole process. Unfortunately, at this time, as much as I would love to have her on board, she does not have the capacity to do that, but she's very supportive of the whole process and project. And I think that Port Phillip Pickers would probably end up as a member at some point, because we're already doing their processing as well. So
yeah, that would be brilliant. Yeah.
Just to answer a couple of the other questions that were in there, about how much time per week. I think Glenn asked that question. Basically, the steering committee would move as fast as you were able to move it. So if people were only available for maybe an hour or 2 hours a week, then that's how long you'd be available for. In our stepped approach, there's a couple of different workshops that we'd run. So what we try to do when we're working with groups like yourselves is to run them run workshops so that we get lots of information, two-way flow. We give you the education and knowledge that you need to make the decisions, and then we support you to make those key decisions within those workshops. So then it would be a case of, if there's research that needs to be done outside of those workshops, or emails to read, or bits and pieces. But I don't know, Kaylee, I would say, those workshops, outside of those workshops, a couple of hours a week with checking, emails and phone calls, maybe that would probably be about it.
And it wouldn't be necessarily all be at once. Obviously it would be good to have a catch up on a regular basis just to make sure everybody's on the same page. But yeah, it might be a phone call here or an email there or whatever as well. So I realize not everybody has as much time to throw at this project as I do. So I am realistic about that. As I said, pie in the sky dreams, but I'll take whatever we can get.
And I think the other question that Charlie asked, would we need indemnity insurance? So the cooperative, to be on a steering committee, as Anthony said, you're not entering any legal contracts as a steering. It's like a working group, basically. Once the cooperative is formed, depending on what products or services it was offering, it would then, you'd then assess whether you need indemnity insurance. I would suggest if you're providing education and training, you would need insurance. If you're a buying group, I'm not so sure. Like, we'd need to, that's part of the thing that would be costed into the budget. With it, your operating budget and business feasibility budget would be, depending on what you're going to be doing, would be whether you need to take out insurance or not. But the co-op can take out insurance that would cover its members.
And you might have existing insurance costs that, as a group, if you then enter into group arrangements with providers of insurance or other sorts of services like that, then you can start saving money as well that way, just depending on how you structure things. So that's for the co-op, but for all of you in your various operations, potentially, depending on the sort of arrangement that you can get into.
And something else that's come up with a project that I'm working on at the moment is, when you come together as your steering group, you may actually find that that you can informally do things. Like the ideas that Charlie's putting here, combining batches, collection of fruit. There are things that you might just realize, just by coming together we can collaborate outside of the co-op. You don't necessarily need to set up a legal entity. So again, we'd definitely, always question making sure that a co-op is a good fit for what it is. What's the shared problem that you want to develop a shared solution for, and making sure that a co-op is a good fit for that.
Yeah, so to clarify, the Bunya Fund grant was to look at the feasibility of converting the business to a cooperative structure. So, maybe the feasibility study says no, it's not, and that's fine. Like, I'm not wedded to the idea. I love it, but I'm not wedded to it. Like, whatever comes, as I said, whatever happens. So, but yeah, because we already have that relationship with you for a number of years, it's been built over a number of years, and I really see this as a way of benefiting everybody potentially. So, but again, pie in the sky, potentially. Do we have any other questions? Oh, Charlie's typing something. Not pie in the face. Yeah, thanks, mate. Appreciate your support. Okay, so I did have next on the agenda a discussion of the roles and requirements of the steering committee, but I feel like we've kind of gone through that. Is there anything, Anthony, Claire, you want to add to that?
No, but we're neither Claire or I are offering any legal advice.
No.
So, once you start, or financial or investment advice, so once you actually start doing stuff. But the great thing about the Bunya Fund and what you've been successful in securing is legal, financial, and tax advice. So you're so far ahead of the game with a lot of groups that you'll really be able to get that really full-on expert advice. Once you've done the groundwork and you know, firstly, what you want to achieve and how you want to do it, and then you go to the lawyers and the tax accountants and go, well, how does this work from a tax point of view? How do we structure this best in a set of rules? What's our disclosure statement going to look like? All those sorts of things. So, yeah, it's step by step. It's finding the thing that's going to benefit the most, that's the easiest to implement, that you can start to get some wins on, and you kind of go from there.
Cool. Thank you so much. And I've put on there a call for nominations, but I'm not going to put anybody on the spot. If you feel called to put your hand up and discuss it more or get involved with, having your contributions towards what the co-op could look like, sort of more formalized, that would be amazing. And you've all got my email address. I'll pop that in the chat as well, and I will be saving the chat and sending that through for everybody. But yeah, I think that kind of covers everything, unless there's any last minute questions.
I'm going to put my phone number in the chat box too, Kaylee. So if anybody wants to, learn a bit more about the role of cooperative bonds and the Bunya Fund and what's been funded, or you just have any other questions that you'd want to ask us, then please reach out.
Thank you. That would be amazing. Alrighty. Well, on that note, everybody, thank you so much for your time this evening. It's been a great discussion, and yeah, I hope to get the video out soon. It will need to render first, but it'll have the chat recording as well. And yeah, I'll probably get the recording out to you probably tomorrow or the day after. So enjoy the rest of your week and the weekend, and I'll be in touch soon.
Thanks, Kaylee. Thanks for putting it out there.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.